Welcome, 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 and thank you so very much for joining me on another episode of Talking Cloud. Now, this is where we talk about anything, everything that has anything to do with cloud. And come on, man, everything has to do with cloud one way or another today. So we talk about just about anything. And I think I've mentioned this a few times. I'm just the Gilligan in this equation. I'm never the expert, but today I've got a fantastic guest I'm so excited about because this lady, Dr. Griffin, to give her the respect, you look in her profile, she's long in the tooth with HR, bright lady, and I'm super keen to have a conversation with her about what's going on in the cloud with AI, with HR, and all the other stuff that she's doing. Her service is a fractional HR service currently, and we're going to get to know her right now. And so I'm excited to welcome to the program Michelle, Dr. Griffin. Thanks for being here. It's good to see you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am super excited to be here and to kind of talk with you and share what I can do with my knowledge I have with your audience. So thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. So listen, I didn't really give you justice. Why don't you push at the doc and just, tell a little bit maybe about yourself, your business, and where you want to take it today.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So my doctorate is in something called industrial organizational psychology, which is the research degree of human capital in the workforce, basically. It's also the degree that makes assessments and behavioral assessments and things like that. What I actually studied, which is kind of nice about things being in the cloud, I've primarily focused on information communication technology, and from the lens of a subsidiary sharing information up to a parent company across international borders. And so I did a case study of a company in Macedonia and Serbia. And so it was definitely that was an interesting few years of my life for that.
Yeah.
And my entire business is virtual.
Say it again. It was on the communication from those subsidiaries and how they carried it back to headquarters, or?
Yeah, so it's pretty much how people communicate across international borders, and how they use technology, how they do and don't use technology, to be honest. So a lot of it was about what type of knowledge do they feel comfortable sharing through technology versus and types of technology, things that are in writing versus on Teams versus phone calls, versus waiting to have things in person. What do they wait and do as corporate events and things like that, and what kind of relationships and trust can be built over technology.
And different or the same languages? I'm just wondering how much language played.
Yeah, so it was great. They all communicated in English. So
Okay.
my entire research did not have to be translated.
Right. I also wondered how would that, if I've got a Macedonia company that but the headquarters is in the UK, and maybe they're not all speaking or maybe thinking Spain, and something where there's a language difference, and how much that would have a factor impact on the work.
Yeah, so when they talk to each other, so when I was not there, the way that they explained it to me, they talked to each other either in Macedonian or Serbian. Some of them were bilingual, but it's very similar since it's both from the Balkan region, that they can understand each other within their own languages. It's close enough that if they get misunderstood, they can clarify and ask some clarifying questions. And they kind of described it would be similar, maybe it's a little more complex, but very similar to a US speaker speaking to someone in Ireland. UK, I think, is a little too close, but Australia or Ireland, where the words are the same, but the way you use them or some idioms or something might not come across right. So they tend to communicate in their own languages.
Right, Spanish.
That's way off, but yes.
but surprisingly similar in a lot of ways, right? So
Yeah,
not the
I
C
mean, I
word, so I
travel
guess.
yeah, no. So I actually travel quite often, which is nice about working remotely,
Yeah.
and owning businesses and being able to travel. So my husband and I actually travel usually internationally once a month,
Mm.
and Portugal and Spain and European countries are some of my favorites. But my husband's first language is Portuguese,
Mm.
and which is really bad because even though my husband and I have been together 20 years, I have never picked up Portuguese,
Yeah.
which is very sad. We've been married 18 years, and his family speaks Portuguese and things like that. But they, they'll talk to me in English, so I've been very spoiled when it comes to
Sure.
that. But we were recently, just last month, on the border between Portugal and Spain, like right on the border, and we were staying in just different castles and
Mm-hmm.
converted locations right there, and it was really interesting because when we were on the border of Portugal, everything was Portuguese cuisine. Everything was, a little outskirts of, more rural areas. So he had definitely had to talk in Portuguese a little more. As soon as we crossed the border to this small town in Spain, they were they were very sweet and very nice, but they were like, it's Spanish cuisine. I can speak a little Spanish. I can speak a little bit of a few things, but I was,
Sure.
basically ordering in Spanish. And my husband won't speak in Spanish because if he tries, it comes out Portuguese. And so I was kind of ordering for us and things like that. And then she was kind of scolding him for speaking Portuguese. It was kind of funny. So yeah, they're a different enough that it comes out funny and they just look at you weird, even when it's close. Like the number 2 is dois in Portuguese versus dos in Spanish. So it's
Right.
enough that if I was in Spain, I was in Madrid and tried to order, a couple glasses
Right.
of wine, and I was like, dois, like Copa de
And the
Vina
context would help
Roja or
also,
something. Yeah.
right? The
And she was
context
like,
would,
you want
yeah,
what? And I'm
yeah,
like, dois. And then my
yeah.
friend who speaks Spanish a little better, she was like, dos. And I'm like,
Those,
same freaking thing. Like,
yeah.
you're
Come
so
on.
close.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
So
that's also
unfortunately, those are a little funnier, but yeah. Like, and then
the
there's some that are way off.
yeah, yeah.
But
I
yeah, so it's really nice being able to, with my whole team, they're completely remote. And I've got, so my company is, I would say it's a decent size. We've got about 40 employees or team
mhm.
members. Some of them are contractors, and about 85 clients. And most of that is in the continental US. I do have some clients that our parent company is foreign. So I do have a client in like Canada, Scotland, Spain, Australia.
Mm,
So we have different cultures and time zones to pay attention to and stuff like that impact my company. But
yeah,
it's been nice to be able to, um, be able to work remote and be wherever kind of thing.
sure, sure. So, what services do you provide? Does your company provide? Are you like a Adwater Shake HR department for companies?
Yeah, kind of. So we ended up kind of stealing the idea from fractional CFOs. They were kind of the first to kind of retire and say, I'll just kind of do my work remotely and fractionally and
Right.
things like that. And then I built it more like a law firm. So I bill like a law firm. So I have within the team members, there's different specialties. And so rather than do a flat rate or do a retainer, it's more like a paralegal and attorney. So if it's a lower level HR person versus, they have a lower rate versus a higher level HR person, and then we fraction out their time to multiple clients.
Got it.
And we kind of basically clock all of our time, and at the end of the month turn in the timesheet with the invoice for them. And so we do pretty much the day-to-day function, the tactical function of HR. So it's not necessarily consulting. That kind of became a dirty word in our description because it
Mm.
has a connotation that we just advise on what you should be doing for
You don't
HR
do
and then kind
anything.
of guide
You
you
just
through it.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
don't do
so we
anything. You
actually
just stand on the
right. So we
sidelines and
actually
yell at me.
do the work. Yeah, so
Yeah,
we do the
okay.
work. We take it on,
Okay.
and we usually get access to HR systems, payroll systems, and we function as the HR person. We also do payroll. We do recruiting and talent acquisition. Very similarly, we function like a corporate recruiter.
Mm,
So they pay us for our time, not for the placement. We usually are working on culture improvements, the candidate experience, an applicant tracking system. Like we want companies to be able to stand on their own. And so we'll kind of build them up and help them understand these areas of business, what's economical for them, what's feasible for them to continue to outsource versus take over. And we kind of train people. We'll often hire an HR person, train that person, and leave. So we're kind of not meant to stay forever. And then we also have...
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say we also have other back-end operations that we've added on. So we also can do bookkeeping, fractional CFO as well now, and sales coaching, business development, leadership coaching, and kind of the digital marketing and kind of SEO side of things too now.
What's where I was going was the profile of your company, like 1,000 employees, 100 employees, any particular industry, or is it just...
So it's not a particular industry. So my background was IT, as from the HR perspective. I was the head of HR at ConnectWise for about 5.5 years, which is pretty well known in the tech space. And my head of talent acquisition was my recruiter there. So it was pretty easy for us to pick up companies in the tech space. And my next company that I worked at corporate was a residential construction company. So from that, I had a various different, industries to start kind of networking in. And we ended up, kind of just adding on more networks, the more people we brought on and could sell their talent. And from there, we were able to just kind of widespread. So our clients range from literally like 2 employees up to 500 employees is our largest at the moment. And, they range from just being a single state to multi-states. Our largest is in like 35 states or something like that. So we kind of help them when they need additional advice going into new states. How are they, staying compliant in their states? We help with some when they're expanding. They're not quite ready to hire a new person. So we might help with recruiting, or we might help with some HR, open enrollment, some little things. So we kind of stay very fractional project based with a large company. The smaller companies that are about under 100, we end up becoming a full force function for them. Like they might just say, just go ahead and do it and let us know when you're, when you need approval for something. So we work with all different kinds of blue collar, white collar, nonprofit. We have government entities. So kind of spans the gamut of everything.
Board. So I want to shift the gears because I'm really keen to hear about what's going on. I mean, if I remember looking at your profile, it's not just HR, but was it psychology? I mean, there's more to you than just HR. Obviously, doctor, I want to talk about AI. I want to talk about what impact you're seeing amongst your clients in the industry overall. I just love.
We get asked. I get asked a lot. We and I get asked a lot about AI taking over jobs and where we're seeing that. And to be honest, we are seeing it. I would say if you were to ask me that a year or two ago, I would say we're not quite ready to see it take jobs. Today we are.
What jobs is it taking?
The ones that I know of that I'm seeing a direct impact is accounting. Software is becoming to the point where bookkeeping is getting updated, and I'm seeing accounting being able to automate a lot of that function. So accounts receivables, accounts payables is half of the work it used to be. So if that is someone's full-time job, that is no longer a full-time job. And so either people are on the chopping block for that, or they're, needing them to improve their skill set and become something more valuable to the company than just, making sure invoices are going out and bills are getting paid and the books are getting reconciled. Like that part is becoming very automated.
But we're not,
and we are starting
yet, what I was going to say is we're not at the point yet where AI is going to replace you full stop in any role. I mean, you just described, what if it took me all day to do it? Now AI can do it in a fraction of the time, but I still got to make sure it's proper and correct at the end,
Right.
the last mile, so to speak, right? We haven't fully given it up to the automation, but it certainly massively impacts productivity, no question. And I've
Yeah,
said
and
for
if
years,
people
I
I
was
was going to
just
say
going to say,
if people are
go
to the
ahead.
point where they need to skill up, like a lot of people are asking HR how to upskill their people, like what kind of training do they need, what kind of other jobs can they be performing, because if a large part of their job is automated and it might be, let's say it's only 25% of their time, what are they going to do to refill that time
Yep.
versus just not paying them to do that job?
Yep.
And
Or
so
sitting
we're
around
seeing a
getting
lot of
paid.
training being needed. Yeah.
Right, or sitting around getting paid. Yeah, I mean, I have said, I've been saying for 2 years, you're not going to get full stop replaced by AI, but if you do a job and someone else does the same job and you're not using AI and they are using AI, you're gone.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no doubt about it. Um, but let's talk about, because I'm curious. You're in the biz. You're going to know the answers to this. I've read stuff and it's anecdotal, and it has to do with people who are experiencing real anxiety over the loss of their job, the impact to their job, and the
Hmm.
need to upskill. And it seems like it's more prevalent in the I want to say 35, 40 years and over, as opposed to maybe the younger. Is that what you experience? I'd love to hear your analysis.
So there's like a love-hate relationship with the different generations. While the younger generations tend to know the technology a little better, they might learn it a little faster because they've been around it the more of their lives than the millennials or older generations beyond that, because now millennials are now our biggest workforce at the moment. um, the the problem isn't necessarily the willingness to learn it or the ability to learn it. It's more the fact that the next generations, the basically Gen Z and now Alpha, they are not sticking with jobs. They have some of the highest turnover
Hmm.
that we've ever seen. So a lot of research is coming out about the work ethic of that generation. It's not that they don't have work ethic, although that's how it's being interpreted. They don't have loyalty to a company,
Their
especially much like
loyalty
the
is
older generation did.
their
And they're
loyalty is to themselves.
Yes, and to how they feel like they're giving back to the community. So they want something that's meaningful, and if as soon as they have any kind of roadblock, they will jump ship. And so, like for example, the turnover is like less than 12 months for Gen Z for how long on average they're staying in jobs, at least with some of the latest research. And Alpha's too young yet. They're still kind of starting to enter the workforce right now. But Gen Z is not sticking around, and we'll see a lot of
Hmm.
resumes with job hopping. So they're literally, I mean, keep in mind 12 months is the average, so we're seeing a lot of resumes with 2 months or 5 months or 6 months, and they're like, well, I have 2 years of experience. I'm like, no, you don't. You have 6 months experience 4 times. Like,
Hmm.
that's not the same. As soon as by the time you've learned something, you've left, and you got to learn all
Hmm.
over again. You're doing nothing but like just onboarding constantly. And so
What's
there's no
driving
value
that?
to that.
What do you think is at the root of that desire to leave so quickly? Is it because I mean, I'll just interject. So I have a 24-year-old, turned 24 in April, and
Mm-hmm.
uh, I have a 30-year-old, or near 30. She's 29. Then I have some older ones, but talking about the younger one, when his mom and I were growing up, I mean, we just like an extra shift. Yeah. We're
Mm-hmm.
looking at any time we can put another quarter in the piggy bank. And we were talking to him, and he had just been on a pretty rigorous, like 6 days of work. And then it was like, I don't know if I want to do that because, I want
Mm-hmm.
some time for myself, right? I mean, it's very noticeable the different emphasis that's placed on me and what
Mm-hmm.
and how hard I'm working and what I'm doing, because that's not what life's about for me. Sometimes it's just I want the day for me.
Yeah, they there's a lot of research now because of what it has impacted that generation, and that's usually what defines a generation. And so they were young enough that when the first economic of their lives happened in 2008, that they have no loyalty to a company because they saw everyone they know getting laid off, and companies are
Mm,
shutting down and going under, and houses are being foreclosed on. So they saw
mm,
a really, essentially their version of the Great Depression, where everything is being impacted and money
mm,
is just being lost. And so they
mm,
have no loyalty to where the money comes from.
right,
And they really feel like it's all dependent on themselves to kind of like figure out that. And then obviously they're seeing a lot of I would say the get rich quick. It's the social media and the content creators. There's a lot of money there, and it's their version of the dot-com boom. So they're seeing
mm,
a lot of get rich quick possibilities. People are making money just by sitting around playing video games and posting,
yeah.
they're
If I get
entertaining enough their
something
content on
viral, right?
YouTube and things. Right. And then
Yeah,
they
I
can,
just need
make
to
some
get
decent
viral.
cash, and people can raise money and things like that, literally having jobs as content creators and doing whatever it is they like to do in their spare time or
Right.
their actual time to make money that way. And then on top of that, now we're starting to see, obviously they were however old they were in COVID, so they saw everything on lockdown. Everything was, people are of age and older, like they started realizing, we shifted to say our family's important. So they had a few years there, only 5 years ago. So, you're at the time that he would have been, what, 19, 20 years old,
Yeah.
seeing everyone reprioritize family and, what is going to make you happy, what's going to make you fulfilled when, life as we know it changed very dramatically
Yeah.
for a very informative years for them. So they were impacted very, very differently than any other generation. And we're just starting to see now what's going to happen to them, as they become
Fascinating.
more adults.
Yeah. 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 So, do you feel like so in the context of those older workers, are they embracing and really buying into AI, or do you feel like they're resisting, or how's is there, one of the things I'm just pondering about is the upskilling and
It's
because
yeah,
there's
it's one of
look
those.
at I'm an old guy, okay? I'm an old guy, but I'm an anomaly because I got into this industry when I was 23, and I couldn't spell computer, but I've been in it the whole time. And so for a 65-year-old, I would suggest probably much more technically sound and in tune than most 65-year-olds, right? Um, that especially those that are outside of the industry. And I don't ever plan on retiring till I die. And so I just wonder what's going on in the minds of the 50-year-old that sees he's still got 15, 20 years of work ahead of him, and what's going on around him. What's she feeling like right now?
So it's really difficult because the ones that I have been interacting with, they want to know it. They're starting to, like, they'll use Chat GPT, but it's very much like Google prompts and getting a little bit more sophisticated answers than it is about training a program to understand a book of knowledge and then asking for more information from that book of knowledge you have trained it on, and treating it like a contributing member of a team or a group.
Exactly.
And then, obviously checking its work and making sure things are accurate, like any other person you would kind of want to have to rely on. So they
I always
don't
say,
know.
Michelle, it's like if I hired you
Mhm.
and you know everything the internet knows, everything the internet knows is, but you're dumb as a rock without the right prompt. If I don't
Mhm.
ask you the right question, and if I also look at you as a brand new hire that has an IQ off the charts, that knows everything on the internet without the right prompt, it's useless. I'm also going to inspect what you expect, like you would with any new hire, and just make sure what
Mhm.
they're doing is what you expect, what you want, right? And that's how I always tell people, say please and thank you. Because we just
Mhm.
don't know. Protect yourself, because you don't know what's going to happen in 20 years,
Yeah.
but
Well, also, it's interesting with the research of AI that, and with ChatGPT and some of the others, depending on what they've been trained, because they're trained to mimic human behavior, and that's kind of the prompts that it's going back and forth on. And so, if you are kind of an a-hole to it, it's going to do that back to you. And so when you're saying please, this costs a lot of money. I think there's even some more current articles about saying please and thank you and how much that actually costs money to like just run for it to just say you're welcome. If
oh,
there's anything else I can help you with, let me know. That answer prompt like costs so much money to just run the AI computing just
gobbling
to
up
answer it.
CPU.
And it's insane. Like it costs them so much money. But research has shown that if you say please and thank you, I forget the actual percentage, but it is definitely a statistically significant difference on how more accurate it is to you in your responses, and
Hmm,
more in depth, and it will go kind of a little bit above and beyond for you the nicer
yeah,
you are to it, or the more appreciative
yeah.
you are. So
You
how
know,
you interact with AI does actually matter. But what I'm really seeing is that they don't know how to prompt it. And because AI is so new and changing so quickly, and there's so many different types of bots or abilities to create a bot, and what you can and can't teach it, and how you can give it body of knowledge, or whether it's something open to the internet or not, things like that.
yep,
There's not a lot of training, so it's
yep.
not like there's these certified training courses that are they're out there, there's training out there, but it's just as fast in movement as the technology that's changing.
And the
So we've
posts, you
seen
see the
quite a bit
posts,
change in
right?
the last year even. Yeah.
You see the posts constantly on LinkedIn where everybody's an AI expert, and they've got these long posts that
Mhm.
have longer dwell time because you're reading through, and they've got all these resources and all these, how to be an expert prompter. And I think what it's indicative of is what you're saying, spot on. There's a huge vacuum in the market. Yes, these tools are phenomenal, but 25 years ago, we were scolded on, you better learn how to use Yahoo and Google and know how to
Mhm.
search. That's all out the door now. I mean, we have
Mhm.
to teach people. And you're right. I wish, I've been saying for 2 years, the most important thing you could do for your constituency is teach them how to prompt, understand
Mhm.
prompts, how to really dig into a prompt, how to set up a prompt, how to because the more accurately you do that, man, the richer the results. But if you're
Mhm.
just approaching it like, that's what you're going to get back. I always say, if
Mhm.
you are, Michelle, the smartest person on the planet, you know everything the internet knows, and I throw you a, hey, should I buy a Ford or a Chevy? The effort I've put into that question is commensurate to the effort you're going to give answering it.
Mhm.
Buy a Ford, it's, and if you're really good, you'll probably ask for clarification if I say, what's the best car to buy? But you see my point, right? But if I'm
Mhm.
really dig in with the prompt, and I'm really specific with what I have for an objective, a goal, what your role is, you know, that's a game changer.
Yeah, there's also, and to tie into like what you often talk about cybersecurity wise, as HR now have created cybersecurity and AI policies that we've now have to put in place of people using AI for their jobs, because if they start entering sensitive data, proprietary information into these platforms, it has the ability to remember that. So if
Yep.
if you start asking about a full name, a company name, revenue information, if you start
Yep.
putting all this information, if you start copying language from contracts and asking it to update or give feedback or give new language, it's going to know all that. And so
A
now
dangerous thing.
right.
Yeah.
And these databases are now open. And so what we were being told from the HR perspective is like, let's say I did that for a company and it's putting all this information out there. You might go in there and start asking ChatGPT something else completely similar, but you're not prompting it for anything particular, but it might start giving you the names of things I have trained it on or taught it or given it access to. And so that information isn't confidential anymore. And so we've had to, kind of scold people or start to train people from that perspective of not only giving it very specific prompts and what you should be prompting it on, but be very careful, give it false information, give it, just say person's name. And then when it kind of gives you, let's say, a contract, you're trying to have it say, some kind of like start of a legal document, and you want to prepare something for your attorney to review versus spending, $600-700 an hour for your attorney to draft for you. You can start to kind of preemptively work on something and save yourself some time and money. Besides going back and forth with attorneys and things like that, which is one way to use it. But you can kind of like, it'll fill in the blanks. It'll kind of just say, well, insert name here, insert company name here, fill in the blank. And then that way you're getting the output, but you're not giving it the sensitive information. So that's a lot of times we're starting to see, because there's obviously like, it's a whole vast back end of what it's doing and who's getting access to that information. So the more real data you give it, the more it knows.
Yeah. And it's important, for example, ChatGPT sucks it all in and it's in. So if I prompt, it's in. Anthropic, Claude, not so. And you can find that out if you go to the bot and you say, tell me everything you know about Dr. Michelle Griffin, PhD. Now, if you go to ChatGPT and you've used ChatGPT, you'll be amazed on what it'll come back. I did that with Claude. It doesn't know anything about me unless I ask it to go and use research and go and then right. But the LLM itself hasn't captured that information where ChatGPT will, and certainly from a DLP perspective, it's a huge issue, and people need to understand it. That's just one element, obviously, of the prompting issue, right?
Yeah, and I think that's something else that kind of goes into understanding AI and what it is capable of, because obviously that's the other thing is by the time you learn something and you've learned how to prompt and you learn how to use it, it's already started to evolve. And that's why it was like the training, just a lot of the older generations, like they want to use it or they know they need to be using it, but which platform and which ones and how, a lot of it right now is pretty much being, feast or famine, self-taught. At least that's kind of what I'm seeing, unless a company is particularly saying, go take this training and go do these things and really pushing AI and, having paid for licenses and things like that for companies to use, which we are seeing companies as a whole embracing it, or specific jobs embracing it.
I was going to ask, are you seeing kind of, because what I've heard, and again, this is, I can't say that I've talked to 500 enterprise clients to validate it, but a lot of investment in and a lot of belief that this is going to be game-changing technology from a productivity, and it is having huge impact on developers, coders, no doubt. But is there a commensurate investment in the human resource as opposed to the AI resource within the organization? Because it seems to me that might be one way to address, mitigate, reduce the anxiety. If I'm working for you and we have a new ChatGPT enterprise license, or we've got this or this, if HR came to me and said, hey, we've invested in these tools to make you better at using this, that might be a good thing.
Yeah, we usually have to explain it's no different than like how you want to purposely design your culture. And not a lot of entrepreneurs or companies think about making culture like I would say, like, intentional.
Mm.
So, another really common thing that might happen is if let's say they're reducing their workforce, and obviously, like, that's happened quite often, either with furloughing or complete layoffs, and then they focus on the bottom line, how that's going to help the company move forward, but they don't focus on the people left behind that are still at the company. And then they might be scared. Is there going to be another layoff? How secure
Yeah,
is
their
my job? Should I be looking for
morale.
another job? And then they're really
Yeah.
concerned about how transparent should they be about what their intentions are about running the company. So if AI is stepping in and they're saying, well, we're making these jobs efficient, therefore this job is no longer needed and they're laid off, it's like everyone else is like, well, if that's how the company handles things versus upskilling and making sure that we have somewhere to land, how are we know that as soon as AI gets good enough for my job, I'm off
Right.
I'm going to be laid off. So
Right.
it's really important that there's intentional language about why it's being used and, how people are going to be impacted and what does that mean for performance evaluations and the job descriptions, and how are they going to be improving and making people better in the workforce. So we get a lot of questions about succession planning, and career pathing, how can we make sure people have a way to improve themselves. And it may not necessarily mean getting higher education formally. It could it could be certifications, it could be just really
Hmm.
understanding the tools and the AI that's out there. And then companies are asking, can we basically go do that. And obviously
Hmm.
I've always felt that the more transparent you are, the better it's going to be, but it just depends on kind of how close you want to hold your cards, kind of
Right.
thing.
Right. How much, at a more tactical level, how much are you seeing AI tools augment, complement, accelerate your job, what you're doing for your clients? Is it making a big impact for you? Is it why
I
you're
use it
traveling all over
constantly.
the world?
I usually have ChatGPT or something up. I use it quite often. I will use it for a few things, like, and it's nice because of how fast it is. Like, for example, one of my team members was like, "Hey, we really should be doing an audit on a client for job classification if they're classified correctly from salary, hourly perspective." And I was like, "Oh, there's checklists out there for that, and there's tests and classification tests and things like that we should be getting from from FMLA and things like that." I was like, "There's all kind and
Hmm.
FLSA." So I was like, "There's all kinds of like tools out there." So I literally did a Google search real fast, found the government resource I was looking for FLSA, and then I went to ChatGPT and was like, "Hey, do me a favor, like check on this website. Here's the classification. Here's the test. Here's
Yeah.
basically they have to fit against these particular salary classifications to be exempt." And then we also need to make sure it's going to pass the task test and stuff. So I prompted it to make that.
Hmm.
And it actually starts now. It's kind of cool because now it will read websites and go on the internet.
Yep.
And so it said, prompting, reading, and kind of told me what it was doing. So it's ChatGPT's kind of changed recently, which I thought was kind of nice.
Yep.
And then just gave me the list, and then it was copy paste, stick it in a Word document, and I did that while I was on the meeting with her because we had like our weekly improvement meetings, client analysis
Yep.
meetings, whatever we're talking about, employment relations and stuff. And within about literally 5 minutes, I was able to give her the full test analysis and the government links to, go make this, make sure our people had the resources to do a current audit.
Yep.
And I was actually kind of impressed with myself that this was like last week. So
Yeah.
I was, I'll
Yeah.
often use it to update agreements because there's times where someone will ask us, it's, not something I need to write a proposal, and it may
Yep.
not be something I've outlined in a proposal before, but it is something that we do.
Yeah.
So I was like, I need some, bullet points for performing this, work for this client and this kind
Yep.
of timeline, and make project plans and that kind of stuff. So that's typically how I use it, but I pretty much use it every other day for something.
It's it's a different way of thinking too. I'll tell you. I'll give you an example. So, I was just and I'll not mention any names, but a colleague came up and we have over 7,000 employees. Sometimes it's hard to figure out who to go to, who to where, for what, right? And he was talking about some particular information that he wanted, and it was not company information, but it was industry information, and it wasn't company proprietary data, it was industry statistics data.
Mm-hmm.
And he started rattling off, so who should I go to, this or him? It's like, I kind of stepped back and looked at him and I said, why are you going to any of them? What do you mean? I said, we all have an assistant that knows everything the internet knows. You just got to go ask. And so I pulled up Claude on my phone and I wrote the very specific prompt about what it was he wanted, and selected research, which means go out and research. And I used Opus, which is for complex tasks. Not that this was that complex, but I wanted to dig deep. 15 minutes later, I forwarded him the link to the document and it had everything he wanted about all the stats he wanted. And my point is, we have to, in the same way that when we did start to use Yahoo and Google and we had to think differently, we're there again in spades about how to solve problems, because we do have an assistant all the time. And what I do want to kind of ask you about, before we run out of time, is, it's a different way of thinking. But I was talking to somebody the other day about think about how we've been, I'm old, school, memorize, pass tests, know this information, right? And now all that shit doesn't even matter because I can get it in an instant. And so to me, I find it very fascinating how it's not about IQ anymore. It's about EQ. It's about the emotion. It's about your being human. Yeah, you got to be able to think strategically, but it's certainly not.
That's what I was going to say. Like it's different now because depending on where you were taught and raised, like strategic thinking was not necessarily a skill taught, which was nice the further I got in my education, because once I got to the doctoral level, a lot of that is you're taught to challenge thinking. Mm-hmm. And you're taught to question, because you basically, at my level, if I am evaluating someone else's research and I challenge it, I am at that level that I can challenge someone else's research.
Yeah.
And something that I publish becomes, essentially quotable and known information and things like that too. So there's a different responsibility that comes with that
and
level
is equally
of knowledge,
right, by someone else,
right? Exactly. And so we become part of that body of knowledge and things like that. And then the other thing is that, I kind of got this in the master's level, but that's still kind of learning and regurgitating information, even at the master's level, versus the doctoral level is coming up with new and unique information, is where even on, like, most people didn't realize Google Scholar exists. So it's just same as Google, it pulls up research articles. And there's also, you can flip the switch on Google Scholar between published documents versus legal documents. So you can switch it between academic or legal, which is kind of depending on what you're looking for, which is kind of nice. But obviously we have to learn to read research and synthesize it.
So many resources that are just amazing that I learn about new ones all the time.
Yeah.
This is the problem when you have 30 billion different websites or whatever.
So, basically what I had to learn to do in a very large way was basically take a large body of knowledge and synthesize it and write, obviously, like my doctorate is, or my final paper was like 300 pages. And honestly, like my resource page was like maybe 25 pages alone just in that section. So it was a lot of reading, but I feel like it's the same thing. Like you still have to know how to take all that information. And so that kind of knowledge, you can prompt for that now. And so even that higher level education, you still, you have to decipher what information it's giving you and the sources it used and that kind of stuff too. So there is still a higher level of knowledge that is needed. I would say even street smarts, like you don't even have to have the academic side of things, but you do have to, like, not just take everything and learn it or regurgitate it. Yeah.
It's I really strongly believe, and I've read, there's a number of citations for some, uh, research that was done at MIT and Stanford and others, and it has to do with uh, that it's really going to come down to our humanness. Because the thing is,
Hmm.
AI doesn't get sweaty palms when it gets nervous, because it doesn't get nervous, right? Its heart doesn't palpitate when it sees something it finds attractive, because it's not that, it's those human aspects that are, I think, are really going to become more and more critical to ascertain how to best embrace as this technology continues to literally be ubiquitous in everything that we're doing in our lives. We can't forget to be us. We can't forget to be
Hmm.
people, um, so it'll
And
be
there's
interesting.
actually just that's the other thing about the next up and cutting generation. They're not taught that. And they're seeing a lot more communication over FaceTime or iPads or virtual meetings. Like there's kind of this weird phenomenon now that they don't know how to answer the phone.
Hmm.
They physically pick up a device and say nothing. And so they're waiting for, because someone called them, they're waiting for them to initiate contact. And
That's so
so
funny.
they are literally having to be taught to say hello when they are literally
Yeah,
answering
how
the
do we
phone.
answer a
So
phone?
yeah, so the next generation, like HR, is really frustrated with the lack of human interaction knowledge. And
That's
so I've
fascinating.
been seeing a lot of people that are still, like, really heavy into the HR practitioner side of things, really seeing people lacking human skills, including
So it's,
communication skills.
we should talk. I've had some interesting ideas, because I really do think that as the machines infiltrate, the only thing that's going to keep us alive and survive is our humanness. Because it's not going to be, we're not going to be smarter. We're not going to be
No.
smarter. And I do get a little troubled by, uh, I think it was um, the quote. I'm trying to remember exactly who said it. It might have been the godfather of AI, but it was something like, I know of no place where a lesser intelligence species reigns over a higher intelligent one. And
That's a good
and
point.
so if you think AI is exceeding our intelligence, what does that say for that equation? Kind of, that's why you always say please and
Yeah.
thank you.
It's like, don't go, I wasn't that. Yeah, there's the which is that's an amazing concept, because I've always like thought of, why can't there be more influencing power from the scientists? And a lot of it comes down to human interaction, and a lot of the scientifically minded people, they're socially awkward. So they're really hard for mainstream people to interact with and understand.
Mm,
And there's
good
people
point.
like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who is
Yeah,
amazing. He's an amazing speaker, and
yeah,
he is captivating, but that's one of very few scientists that can really make an impact with
right.
mainstream people.
Yeah, that's a
And
really
so
good point.
unfortunately, it's like we're really kind of, at a disadvantage of reaching people that, you know, when they don't have an intelligence level to a certain degree, like the people that do have that kind of knowledge and can steer AI or computing or science in one direction or another, they're the ones that can understand it and follow it and influence it versus
Right.
mainstream people. And
Yeah.
that's also an issue.
Yeah. Fascinating stuff. Man, I tell you, we could talk for hours. I could tell, Doctor. I mean, I find it fascinating. I find it really fun, just to kind of dig into this unbelievably fast moving, fast changing world right now with AI at the precipice of everything we're doing. I just think it's amazing. And you're right in the thick of it. So thanks for, sharing your intelligence, your insights, your comments. They were great. Really appreciate you being on the program.
Thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed it too. I told you I get some wicked smart people on the program, and today is an example. So if you enjoyed it, please like it, share it, tell your friends, subscribe, and come on back to the next episode of Talking Cloud. Thanks so very much.